Hey everybody, welcome back to Kat's Kitchen. I'm so glad that you're back here with us. Today we have another video for meal prepping / freezer meals. So I'm just gonna go over my menu with you. And we'll be making this over the course of a few days because it would be far too much for one day for one person. So yes, we're gonna be doing this over the course of probably about 3 days. I should be able to get this accomplished. So what we'll be having is, and like I said, I will leave these recipes in the description box below. If they're not my recipe, I'll leave a link to the websites where I get these ones. This first one is a Max and Irma's. It's like a retake on it. It's their chicken tortellini soup. Or I'm sorry, not tortellini soup, but tortilla soup. So we're gonna make that. That's a chicken tortilla soup. We're gonna meal prep, and like I said, these are gonna be freezer meals as well. That's why I have so many listed here and different varieties. We're gonna prep some beef stew, sloppy joes, chili, meatloaf, meatballs, hamburgers. We're also gonna make some wedding soup, breakfast sandwiches, and then we're gonna do like a marinated chicken, like a balsamic glazed chicken. I was gonna do like a teriyaki chicken. That would be really, really tasty. But when I went to Sam's Club, they were all out. They didn't have any teriyaki, so picked up the balsamic instead, and that'll be tasty as well. And then we're also gonna probably make more of like in the pan. So all those things I mentioned, you can pretty much freeze those in like a large freezer bag. You know, all those things would be very easy to just, you know, freeze them flat so that you can stack them more, and then you'll have more room, you'll be able to conserve more room in your freezer. So, and the other two meals that I'm, you know, going back and forth if I'm going to make or not, and one is like a southwestern casserole that has like beans, rice. You can either do chicken or beef in there, with corn, tomatoes, other veggies if you like. And then another one is I'm thinking about having like the original recipe was a fettuccine with creamy pesto. And basically all that is the pasta of your choice. You can really choose any pasta you want. And then the creamy pesto is just a pesto with an Alfredo mixed together. And I do have some Alfredo my mother-in-law gave me, so we can utilize that as well for the recipe. So like I said, we'll see what we get through. We'll see what we can work on. But right now I'm gonna start with the ground beef, because that's fairly easy to get that rolling. It's good to take care of the things that take the longest first, and then, you know, whip into all the other things. So for our recipe here, let's see here. So the beef stew meat, I'm not gonna cook that meat prior. That's gonna be just my raw meat going into the bags. We're gonna prep all the veggies for the beef stew. That's gonna be good. Excuse me, for our sloppy joes and our chili, and if we make that southwestern casserole, those are the 3 recipes that I need cooked ground beef for. So what I have over here are 2 large stock pots heating up. I have some avocado oil in there for the high burn point, high smoke point. So what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna start throwing, you know, as much ground beef in here as possible, but not too much because I obviously want it to cook and brown up nice for us. Now the other ground beef recipes that I have that are gonna go into the freezer raw are gonna be our meatloaf, our meatballs, and our hamburgers. And then whenever I make the wedding soup meatballs, those are also going to be raw. I'll just put them in there, and then whenever I cook the soup, then the meatballs will cook in there because they'll be very small. The meatballs for wedding soup are usually only about like a size of a nickel or so. So those will cook just fine in the broth. And sometimes you don't want to pre-cook those really small meatballs in the pan first, like you would traditionally for, say, like a marinara sauce or something, or a traditional meat sauce. Because if you have a meatball that small, oftentimes it'll just break apart, and then you're ending up with like just a ground beef situation, you know, like browning up ground beef. So we're trying to avoid that. So like I said, these the freezer bag meals that I'm going to be preparing, pretty much everything I told you outside of the 2 casseroles, and outside of our meatloaf and hamburgers, pretty much everything else can be dumped into the crock pot and either to cook or warm up. So that's kind of what I wanted to with these bagged freezer meals. So we're gonna get going here. I'm sorry if you hear my washing machine in the background. It is downstairs, but it is so loud. But it's working for us while we were working and doing something else, so that makes me grateful. So what we're gonna do, my friends, is we're gonna get started. I need to put our chicken for our recipes in one of my crock pots, and then like I said, I'm gonna start divvying up some ground beef into my 2 pots and then just letting that all work together. And then once those things are cooking for us, then I'm gonna switch gears and put together all of the raw ground beef recipes that we're going to put together and mix up and season, and then we'll mold our hamburgers, our meatloaf, and our meatballs, the normal size ones and the little ones for the wedding soup. So stay with us, and I hope this inspires you to prep food for your freezer, or even if you just want to do it, you know, a few days ahead or a week ahead, whatever makes it easier for you. Honestly, ever since I started making freezer meals, absolutely love it. It takes so much stress off of you, especially if you're working a lot or going to school or just have a busy life or, you know, a busy family, you know, whatever it might be. It really takes pressure off. Like I said, I don't mind taking 3 days out of my week to make meals that will last us for, you know, up to 2 months. So that's really, really nice. And I don't mind cooking here and there, but it's really nice to know that, hey, we have home cooked good food in the freezer. We just have to put either in the crock pot or bake in the oven, and dinner is ready. So stay with me, guys, and I'll see you soon whenever we're preparing our meat. All right, everybody, so I'm just gonna turn you around here so you can see what we're working with. I've got our chicken in our crock pot already, 3 pounds. Okay, and then we've got some of our ingredients laid out. I've got our meat here. This is our, let's see here, this is our stew meat. And then I have some more ground beef back here, more stew meat, more ground beef, lots of ground beef. And then we got our 2 pots over here with our avocado oil, and they're just heating up for us. And we'll just put them on mid-low for right now. I'm gonna put in a little bit of liquid aminos. I am gonna put in some liquid smoke, just a touch. I really enjoy the flavor of it, and I think it'll add a nice little depth of flavor. Next, I'm gonna add in salt, pepper, Italian seasoning, garlic and onion powder, parsley, and paprika. All right, so now I'm gonna season up our ground beef, and I'm also gonna do this fairly generically as well, depending on what dishes we finish them with, then I'll season them accordingly. So whenever we do our chicken, our chili, I'll put in our chili powder and etc. and all the other special ingredients in there. But right now I'm just gonna use honestly all the same ingredients that I used before, except this time we're gonna add Worcestershire sauce. So Worcestershire, liquid aminos, garlic, Italian seasoning, salt and pepper, paprika, onion and garlic powder, and then our parsley. And before I put in our wet ingredients such as the Worcestershire, the liquid aminos, and the garlic, I'm going to let them cook for a little bit. I want this meat to brown up before we put in anything liquid. Otherwise, it'll inhibit your meat from browning. Okay, everybody, so while our chicken is cooking in the crock pot and we have our ground beef cooking on the stove top, I have prepped a bunch of onions. I also put, I split some onions up before and did both of the pots, my stock pots, on my stove for the ground beef. Next, we're gonna work on our meatloaf. So I have 3 pounds of ground beef in here, and we're gonna make 3 meatloaves. That's what I'm gonna start with. If I wanna make more later on, I can always do that, but we're gonna start with 3 meatloaves. So usually I do 1 pound meatloaf, so you can do whatever you need for your family. So we're gonna add in some of our diced onion. And normally I usually add in 1 egg per pound of meat. So in my case, I'm gonna add in 3 as our binder. And then I'm gonna add in 2 envelopes of onion soup mix, some breadcrumbs, and then I do have these fried onions. I don't have enough. Sometimes I'll put these on top of my meatloaf. I don't have enough for the top of each of them, so I'm just gonna put these inside and they can hang out inside. Onion soup mix here, and then for the seasonings, honestly I'm using a lot of the same seasonings. I think I'll put a little steak seasoning in this. We're gonna do salt and pepper, onion, garlic powder. I'm gonna put minced garlic in here. We're also gonna put some Dijon mustard in here as well. And yeah, and if you have some ketchup, you can put some ketchup or barbecue sauce in. That makes it nice and moist. Or you can put that on top. That's always nice as well. And then we're just gonna give this a mix. I'm gonna get my gloves on, we'll give this a mix. And then I'll get my large gallon size bags out. And then we'll mold them into the shape of a loaf inside the bag. And I'm also adding in a little bit of liquid aminos and some Worcestershire sauce as well, just to give it some nice flavor. Okay, good healthy dose of that. Alrighty, so our 3 pounds of ground beef are mixed up for our meatloaves. So what I'm gonna do is try to divide this into 3 sections in my bowl. And I'm just gonna make like a little line here and just kind of divvy it up like that. And then I took our bag, I did label and date it, and I rolled it down, you see here, because we don't want to get any of the ground beef on the seal or on the outside of the bag, just to keep it clean. So I rolled it down. We're gonna pop in the meat like so, and then we're gonna mold it. And before we mold it, I'm actually gonna put the meat in each bag to make sure that I have about the same amount. Like I said, about 1 pound a piece, because that's what works out for our family. If you need a larger meatloaf, by all means, you could probably, I mean, you can do whatever you're, either if you want to put this into, basically since we're pre-molding it, you can almost make it any size you need, even like probably like up to a 5 pound one, I would believe. And then when you make it, just make it on a sheet pan. That way, you know, you don't have to try to stuff it into a pan, because it'll already be shaped. And then just make sure that you don't, if you're putting, you know, if you're doing more than like 2 pounds of beef or 2 pounds of meat in general, you can actually cut this with turkey if you want, or other, you know, other meat, pork, whatnot, whatever you want. However, just don't make it too thick. That's what I'm trying to say. Because the thicker you make it, and you can also reshape this before you go to bake it. So here's an example of one. We just kind of shaped it like this. And then when we go to bake it, we'll pop it on our cookie sheet and we'll be ready to rumble. And then, like I said, you can put whatever sauce you want on the top. You can make a sauce. You can do barbecue sauce. Ketchup is very common. You can do whatever you want with this. I'm just gonna mold these here. And these are pretty much ready for immediately going into the freezer, which is kind of like why I like to do all the ground beef stuff like this while my other meat is cooking, because that way we're getting so much done. There's number 2. And our third one. I love all those onions in there. They look so good. This is just gonna make for some really easy dinners. And some easy sides for this would be either a baked potato, big sweet potato, and then just roast some veggies. Or if you're really short on time, you can do canned veggies or even frozen veggies. There's no problem with that. Or a fast salad would be good. You can make this into a meatloaf sandwich if you want, or just have it as like a meal. So there we go. We got 3 meatloafs done. I'm gonna wrap those up and wash my hands, and we are good to go. Alrighty, next we're gonna be working on our burgers. I have 4 pounds of ground beef in here. I'm gonna add in some diced onion. Really makes it nice if you can try to prep a little bit of this ahead of time like I did with these onions, and I'm going to be doing with my other veggies for our soup when that is going to be coming up here. But those meatloafs literally took no time at all. It was just so nice. I just put them right in the freezer and they stacked right in there perfectly. I'm putting 4 eggs in now. I'm putting one egg per pound in. But yeah, those meatloaves stacked in perfectly, and they're in my upstairs up here in my freezer. So it's not that big of a freezer up here, so that's why I try to be a little bit more diligent of how I wrap things and stack them. That way I can fit as much in there as possible. But I like to keep all my prepared meals up here and then have the bulk food downstairs in the larger freezer. I don't know if that helps you guys at all or not. Okay, to this, just as another binder, is we're gonna add some breadcrumbs. You can make your own. You can do Italian breadcrumbs. You can do panko. This is panko, whatever you want there. I think that'll be good. Next, we're gonna add in some mustard, a little bit of liquid smoke, Worcestershire, liquid aminos, garlic, and onion powder. And for our burgers, I'm gonna do some steak seasoning and a little bit of paprika. And then we'll just mix it all up and make our patties and put them in our freezer bags. All right, guys, so now it's time to work on our chili. Our ground beef is all done. I drained it, and what I did is I just took a colander and lined the colander with some paper towels, and then drained off the meat, and then I put everything back into my big pot. So this is the big one. My little one is back here. So the meat comes up to right about here, so just about halfway. So we're gonna start with our chili products now. So what I have done is I canned some baked beans. So these are pinto beans, And what I'm gonna do, because I do have a good bit of these, I'm going to open a few of these to use for some of the bean mixture in our chili. And then I also have some tomato base, which I've canned. And basically that's just like a, kind of like a byproduct whenever I was canning my tomatoes. This was super, super easy to make. I think I almost made it like a, just a seasoned tomato juice. And I have a video on it if you're interested. You can always go back and check that out. So that's really cool. So this is basically seasoned tomato juice. All the tomatoes were just emulsified. And then I have just some tomatoes, canned tomatoes here to make it a little extra chunky, because we need that for a good chili, of course. And then I have a bunch of beans. So obviously, like I said, these are my canned pinto baked beans. They're also gonna add a little sweetness too, which is nice, because I put molasses, brown sugar, I put liquid smoke in here, so it's gonna give that nice, rich depths of flavor that we want in a chili. And then here I just have some backup canned beans. I have a bunch of these. It's just, I brought only a few over here that I'm gonna need at a time, because I wanna use some of my canned goods that I canned up first. But I have Great Northern beans, I have kidney beans, and then I have some mild chili beans that are already in a sauce. And those are all from Aldi's. I also have black beans, I have cannellini beans. I've got so many different types of beans because I like a lot of beans in my chili. And the best thing about, you know, the way I cook is you can mix and match whatever you like. If you only like a certain type of bean, only put a certain type of bean in there. That's perfectly fine. The beauty about a chili is, you know, you can really do whatever you like. So I just wanted to show you too, whenever we open our can jars, you can see how beautiful and red this is. I canned this in September of 21. When you want to do 3 things. So when we pop the lid, we're going to listen for that whoosh of air. So we're going to listen, we're going to smell. So there's the whoosh of air. We're going to smell, because if something is off, your nose will tell you. So we listened, we heard the whoosh of air, we smelled, it smells amazing, just smells like beautiful tomatoes, ripe tomatoes. And then the third thing that we're gonna do, just as a precaution, if you wanted to, you could eat these right out of here because you already passed those 2 tests, you know, the sound of the lid and the seal breaking, and then the sniff test. That's perfectly fine. Now, obviously we're gonna cook these in the third line of defense, just in case anything if there was any form of bacteria or anything in there, is we're going to be cooking it for over 15 minutes. So that's what everything calls for whenever you're canning. So we're gonna pop these amazing tomatoes into our chili with our ground beef. And I'm just using a rubber spatula to get everything out of my jars, because I don't want to use something metal and scratch the inside of my jar. Now your little lid covers, those lids, you can't use these to re-can. I know some people do, but I don't like to go through all the effort of canning and it not seal. So I don't really like to take the chance of, you know, reusing them again, but you can reuse them for storage items. You don't have to throw them away. So if you want to put, like, you know, flour or sugar or spices or anything, you can wash those and reuse them for that. Or if you like to keep stuff in the refrigerator in those jars, you can very well use those little lids. You can reuse them for that. But you don't, it's not recommended at all to reuse those lids for canning. Okay, so I'm just opening up my jars here. Right now I got 2 quarts of my diced tomatoes, and those were, I believe those were beefsteak tomatoes, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, see, that one's good. I'm I'm gonna open 2 baked beans. And that was good too. So this sauce was super, super thick. So you can see that it started to emulsify the beans down here, but up here at the top, it kind of got a little bit dry. But it smells great. And we're gonna add it in. And then our tomato base, we definitely need this to thin out. Now, as far as your canned beans, you can put the juice of the beans in there if you like. If you don't like it, you can rinse them. You can do whatever suits your fancy. That's all a matter of preference. Okay, got our tomato base. It smells amazing. All those seasonings. And this is also, I know I keep saying it in a lot of my videos, but this is also part of our pantry challenge because we're starting to use items up that are in our pantry. So that when our garden is producing this year, and even if our garden doesn't produce absolutely everything that we need, because this is the first time that we're gardening in this area, we can always go to our local farm. We have a lot of local farmers around here. And we can just go there, and that's how I got all of these items before, was I was going to our local farm and just ordering everything. So that is definitely a blessing. So I'm just going to take the time to get all these out of the jars and out of the cans into my big pot here. And then I'm going to season this again. I'm going to mix it all up and season. I'm going to taste it first and then season, just because I did season the meat individually. And some of these canned items that I canned, I season them also individually. So I'm going to see what it needs. Obviously, we need to put some paprika and some chili powder in here to make it a chili. All right, everybody. Hello, welcome back. It is day 2 of our project. Now, today I had a myriad of things to do as far as it is tax season and work. I had work to do and a few other things I had to do for work. So, that took a lot of the day. So, where we're at now is I started our wedding soup. Thank goodness I made the chicken in the crock pot yesterday. That helped me out. So I cubed up the chicken and we started our broth for our wedding soup. I mixed up our meat for the meatballs, and I'll show you that here in a minute. And I'll tell you what I put in everything. But basically, down in the description box, I'm going to leave you with a single recipe. That way, if you're not making a huge batch, you know, you don't have to be subject to the large measurements. However, if you need to adjust your recipe, on my blog that I have, catskitchenblog.com, on there you'll be able to adjust it to your liking, whether you have a really big family or a small family, or you know, whatever you need. So that will be good for you guys, but I'll let you know what I put in I'll start with our broth, and then we'll switch over to the meatballs. And then you'll see me rolling a bunch of meatballs. We're going to be making the mini meatballs for our wedding soup. And then we're gonna be making like a medium size to freeze for later on for some pasta. Now, yesterday, I do want to give you a little recap. I have 4 gallon size bags of chili out of that, labeled and dated. They're in my upstairs freezer right here, which is perfect. And each one of those bags for Mark and I is probably going to be anywhere between 5 to 6 servings, which is great. And I wanted to tell you about the convenience of that and I laid them all flat. You want to make sure that you lay them flat because for a couple of reasons. The first reason is they'll fit and stack in your freezer a lot better to conserve space. The other reason is when you go to thaw them out and you take it out of there and either lay it in your sink to thaw, or you can put it in a bowl. Sometimes I have to put it in a bowl overnight and then I'll just thaw it like that in the refrigerator. It will thaw out so much faster for you. So anything you can freeze flat like that in a bag, that will be the fastest way to thaw it out. So, what else did we do? Yeah, we froze those, and then we also had enough chili for a few lunches as well. Basically, it would be I took 4 portions out for lunches, 2 for him, 2 for me, and then that's perfect. We're making wedding soup now, so him and I will probably have another portion of that. That'll take us pretty much to the end of the week, the work week as it were. And then, like I said, we're making new things all the time around here, especially with our schedule. So here's what we got going on the stove right now. I have a few quarts of water in this pot for our noodles for the wedding soup. And right here, this is the larger pot I was telling you about. I have in here, I just filled it up with water, and then I used a bunch of chicken bouillon and some beef bouillon. Since there's chicken and beef in this recipe, I just wanted to get a little bit of both flavors of that. I also put in some diced onion. I diced up that chicken that we had yesterday. And then to this, we did salt, pepper, Italian seasoning, onion, garlic powder, parsley, and then the minced garlic as well. So that is pretty much our stock. So I'm letting this kind of come out to a simmer. I just had to add in some more bouillon to this, a little bit more salt and pepper, garlic and onion and parsley, just to kind of bring this up to the flavors that I like. But like I said, once again, I'll give you more of a definitive recipe down below. This is our bag of spinach. This is I think 2 pounds, 2.5 pounds. So we'll be using a good bit of this for the soup, which is nice. And then here, I'll show you the little noodles that we have rearing up for. This is the wedding soup noodles that we're going to be using. And then for our lovely meatball mixture, we did here some Dijon mustard, liquid aminos, Worcestershire sauce, minced garlic, breadcrumbs, onion, and then we did salt, pepper, we did some steak seasoning. I'm just looking over, onion and garlic powder, parsley, Italian seasoning. I'm not sure if I said that. I also put in here, I had a open jar of tomato sauce in the refrigerator. I wanted to use that up. And I also used almost a whole container, I believe 8 ounce of Parmesan cheese. What else did I put in here? I think, a few eggs, quite a few eggs. I think I used about 6 eggs for this. This is 4 pounds of ground beef here. I need a bigger bowl. That's one thing I need to purchase that. But anyway, so we're gonna get this rolling here. You're gonna see me rolling out these meatballs, making 2 sizes, and here we go. All right, everybody, so I'm done rolling my meatballs. So I have about a medium-sized bowl here of our meatballs for pasta later on. I'm going to be freezing those in freezer bags. And then I have our little mini meatballs here, a smaller bowl for our wedding soup. So right now what we're gonna do, and our wedding soup our broth has come up to a boil. So I'm just going to gently drop these meatballs in, as well as about I'm gonna start with half of this bag of spinach. Like I said, this is 2.5 pounds, but I'm making a lot of soup. And then I'll see if I need to add more. It cooks down quite a bit. And then we'll go from there. And then I'm gonna give it a little sample. Let me taste the broth first before we put the meatballs in, because I like to do that so then the meatballs can cook. So let's taste this broth. This broth has been cooking now for, I wanna say, let's see, it is 3:30. I want to say it's been cooking for almost about 3 hours now, which is good. That's really good. So now I'm going to add in our spinach and our meatballs. All right, everybody, here is our wedding soup. It looks so luscious and rich and beautiful broth. This has been cooking for, I want to say, good 4.5, 5 hours now. I have the noodles separate there over here. You can see these are all ready to go. I just didn't want these to overcook or soak up too much of the broth, so I made these separate and they're cool now, so they're sitting over here. So what I'm gonna do with this pot of soup is I'm gonna let this cool completely. At that point, once this is cold, I'll be able to add in the noodles so that the noodles don't overcook, and then I'll be able to put it in my freezer bags and label it and date it for the freezer. And I'll probably pull a little bit of this out for us to eat a few meals, and then I'll freeze the rest. So I'm presuming, since this is about the same size the chili was, we'll probably end up with 4-gallon freezer bags, which will be really nice. So stay tuned, and I will be showing you guys the next recipes that we have coming up: the beef stew, sloppy joe, the breakfast sandwiches, and the Max and Irma copycat recipe for the chicken tortilla soup. I may make that into another one, but if I do, I just want to thank you guys all for watching so much. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if I don't, mold this all into one video, please come back and watch that next video. It's going to be awesome. We're going to have another good time in the kitchen together. So I hope I'll see you guys soon. Thank you again. Bye-bye.